here we go. So again, I'm Carolyn. Thought I would share some insight into how college students can use AI in the job search. So just, why are we talking about this topic? I think as AI has evolved in all of our lives, there is also been a rapid growth in AI tools for the job search. So beyond just the general generative AI and things that are available to the general public. There are also these tools that are being developed specifically for the job search, for creating resumes, for doing practice interviews. And so I think a lot of these things are really relevant in the work that we do in career services, but also able to be accessed when career services isn't available. And so there are a lot of helpful things that students can use if they're unable to get in to see us at the time they want it, in the middle of the night or whenever they have their job search on their mind. There's also, I think, this increasing fear we're hearing from students and other job seekers that there is this fear of employers using AI screening tools or applicant tracking systems to sort of weed people out of the process. And there's a little bit of myth there that I'd like to dispel about folks really kind of using AI against applicants. Really, it's to make the lives of the employers easier and track applications, but we're not seeing as much of like using AI as knockout. And so I think that's something really important to sort of help students calm their fears on that. And then there's also been just a growing amount of questions in our appointments with students, and then also just seeing evidence of them using AI in their job search documents, whether that's a cover letter or a resume, or even hearing things in interviews, both at the student level and then also even, as you mentioned, like recruiting folks to work at the U, looking for things that are sort of giveaways that folks are using AI, and maybe some pointers on how to avoid that. And then it's also, there are some really helpful things out there, really great ways to use AI to enhance your job search or enhance a student's job search. So I want to share some of those applications with you as well. So a question I kind of want to throw out, a common assumption is that all students are using AI in their job search. If you had to guess, do either of you have a guess on how many students are actually putting AI to use in their job search?
I would say 30%.
I guess maybe 40%.
Yeah, you're both really close. So about a third. About a third of students report, and this is from a NACE survey that was done. So NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So it's one of the professional organizations that many career services professionals and also recruiters from the employer side belong to. And so I'm going to refer to them a few times about this survey that they did. And what they found is about a third of students are using it. And so that might be a little underutilized. As I mentioned, there's a lot of tools out there that can really help students with their search. And I think it's enlightening to know that they're not all just running out there. I think in CSE, one of the things that I've seen is that students don't think of it in that way. They're using AI for lots of other uses, and it doesn't really occur to them. Oftentimes I see the light bulb go off when I ask the question, oh, have you thought about, putting this into ChatGPT or using Gemini to revise this? And they're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. So I think there is some education that could be done, some help on creating good prompts and things like that as well. So when students are using AI, they also asked, what are you using it for? And so among the students that are using it, they're using it to tailor their cover letters, to prepare for interviews, and then to customize their resumes for specific roles. And I would argue these are all great uses of it. So, cover letters can be something that feels really overwhelming and intimidating because they aren't things that we write very often. And so using AI to get started with that, or to take a draft that you already have and customize it for a particular job, could be a really good use for Gemini or ChatGPT or some of the other AI tools available. Same thing with customizing a resume to a specific role. If you've got your resume in great shape, it's it's really nice to be able to upload your resume or portions of it and then ask these systems, how could I make this even stronger for this specific type of role, or even uploading a job description and looking at that exact role. And then preparing for interviews, students are using this to think of interview questions they might be asked, which I think is a really great use of this, since interviews, again, are sort of a mystical thing. We don't always know what folks are going to ask us. Some of that can ease some anxiety if we have some ideas of what we might be asked in the process, help us prepare better. And then what students aren't using it for, so I think this is important to think about too. They aren't using it, they reported not using it to make career decisions, not relying on it for that exploration piece, not generating content from scratch or relying on it to do all the work. So really using it more as a tool and a sounding board, and not using it to replace the humans in their life that can help them with decision-making processes, like our academic advisors and faculty members and career counselors. They're still coming to us for those types of conversations, for us to revise these documents or help give feedback. And so I think that's all really, really good stuff too. So they also looked at why students are hesitant to use AI in their job search. And I think the common barriers show a lot of similar trends to why folks are hesitant to use AI in other areas of their life as well. So thinking about ethical concerns, I think that's great. I think it shows that we've been talking about these things enough, that there are concerns with just using generative AI to create your own work. And so there are some hesitations there. One of the other things they mentioned was students are unclear about how to use AI well in a job search. And so an opportunity for some education and some resources there to be able to help them navigate what a good prompt might be, what they could even be using it for, and how to use these tools best to their advantage. And then the fear of how employers might perceive using AI in their job search materials. We have heard some feedback from employers of students using or appearing to use AI actually during the interview as opposed to preparation. And so even, speaking or typing questions into AI live and reading answers off the screen. So I think there's some well-founded fear that employers would perceive that in particular negatively. And I'll talk about some other issues with it as well. But and then, of course, data privacy concerns. So I think that's something that we're all feeling kind of hesitant about with AI, is how much do you feed it and what do you feed it and where are those lines? And so these are some of the things that are making students a little bit hesitant about that. I wanted to share how career services professionals are using AI. And so career centers are reporting pretty rapid growth in AI use, mainly in individual appointments or preparing for appointments and helping students one-on-one, or creating resources to help students use AI tools better. We saw a pretty quick adoption rate over the last 2 years, going from about 20% of offices using it to over 70%. So it's a pretty big jump in that amount of time. So a quick adoption, a little bit faster than even students are adopting these tools. And so this is really, I think, interesting to see. I think for career professionals, career services professionals, we're always looking for ways to scale our resources and to reach more students. And so AI is giving us options for doing that. I'll share a couple of tools that that we have access to and that folks are using in the career services space. The most common uses align really well with what students are using it for. So those kind of common uses here being preparing for interviews, resume and cover letter drafting, and then additionally job search support strategies. And so students aren't always using it in that way, but we are. And so I know for me, this is something that I've used. I've used Gemini or ChatGPT for all of these reasons. I think it's particularly helpful when I'm preparing to do practice interviews with students to generate practice interview questions. I find that really useful. it makes it a lot quicker than me sitting scouring through a job description trying to come up with questions. I can pop it into Gemini and ask it to come up with some questions for me, and that's a really great time saver. I think for job search strategies, this can also be helpful in, a student who's really stuck, helping them come up with more creative and additional strategies to try beyond our conventional suggestions. And so sometimes these tools can be helpful at churning up ideas that we haven't thought of yet. There, like I mentioned at the beginning, there are some tools that are specifically available for job searching. One of those areas is resume and cover letter scanners. And so there are some software developed software that will help scan your documents to make sure that they are applicant tracking system friendly, that they are using keywords from the job description. So 2 examples of that. One is JobScan. So JobScan has the ability to, you're able to upload the job description as well as your resume, and it will give you a score on how well your resume matches that particular job. So that can be really helpful to get feedback. This can be helpful, especially for students who are maybe applying to positions outside of their major. This would be great for job changers. Can be really helpful for students just to get kind of a baseline if they're applying for a job, to see, are they highlighting the right skills and experiences on their documents. Quincy is one that we actually have access to at the U, and other career services departments are using it a little more heavily than we are. We're just kind of getting into it. But Quincia does something very similar to JobScan, where it actually uses templates and example resumes that we have uploaded to compare how the student's resume looks, and has some guidelines that we feed into it to be able to give students feedback on their resume. And so this is a tool students can use independently. They can upload their resume. Quincia will give them a score and also show them recommendations for how they could make their resume stronger. It's not a perfect system, but it is getting better, and it is something that as we use it, we're learning more about. And so this is something that really prides itself on helping documents become applicant tracking system friendly. One of the biggest advantages of that to the applicant is that when your resume is easily uploadable, it makes it so that you don't have to fill in all those blanks on an application quite as much. So those applicant tracking systems are able to read the documents a lot better if you're using certain formatting things on your resume. So these systems can really help you figure out if your resume is able to do that. And then, of course, there's AI writing assistants. So things like Gemini and ChatGPT can be really helpful in the revising, drafting, customizing of your documents. So this is a helpful tool for many reasons. You can upload a draft of a bullet point and ask, can you help me make this better? Can you help me rephrase this? Is there anything you would add to what I already have written? So a lot of great uses of these systems as well. There's formatting tools that are available. So this is, I think, things that many of us have thought of over, and have probably used ourselves over time, is just the templates and formatting tools that are available in things like Canva and Google Docs. Things I would caution is that oftentimes those tools are not super applicant tracking system friendly. And so being cautious of what templates are being used and how they're being used. We have some templates that we recommend students use, but these are out there, and there are tools that if you upload your raw information into, they will actually do the formatting pieces of the document creation for you. And then interview practice. There are some great tools out there for interview practice. Quincia also has, in addition to its resume features, has some interview features built in. And the way that works is there's some questions that will prompt you, and you record yourself answering the questions. And then it scores you and gives you feedback based on your your nonverbals as well as your verbal answers and what you're saying. Google has something as well called Google Interview Warmup. I'm not as familiar with it. I haven't actually used that one myself, but it does something very similar where it's going to give you some interviews and interview questions and then give you feedback as well. So these tools can be helpful in providing good feedback on documents, but I think there is a need still for all the normal cautions that we have when using AI, that there are possibilities of false information or bad information, embellishing, particularly in the writing. And so really still having that human element of proofreading and checking and making sure that what it's saying is actually true to the experiences a student has had. I wanted to share a couple examples of ways to use AI in the job search responsibly. So I mentioned tailoring a resume to a job description. And so some things that would be appropriate for the role of AI in this would be, identifying the key skills in a job description. And so one of the things that can be really helpful is uploading a job description to one of these systems and then asking it to identify some of those key skills, or checking what you think are the key skills the employer is looking for against what what Gemini would say, and see, like, I think these things are really important. This is what I'm highlighting in my resume. Would you agree? And kind of getting some feedback on that. And then you could also, upload your resume and compare that to the job description and get some feedback on how well those things are matching. But with this, students still, we're not removing that human thinking, critical lens, where students are still going to need to decide what experiences are truthful and relevant to them, looking for accuracy and making sure it still sounds like it's in their voice. This is one of the things that I think can be a pretty big giveaway as you're an employer, or if you are, helping a student. Every once in a while, there'll just be a bullet point that doesn't quite sound like the rest of them. Maybe it's more detailed, or maybe it's that M dash in there. The kind of giveaways that we see with the AI. So helping students by questioning those things can be really beneficial. This one doesn't quite fit the rest of them. How did you write this one? And asking those kind of questions can be illuminating. And then, you still need to make sure that what is in there is actually factual with these skills and experiences you've had, because it is capable of making up experiences that you haven't had or a student hasn't had. And so, making sure that those things are accurate. And another great use is as kind of like a skills translator. So I think sometimes when we're working with students, one of the things that they are unsure about is how can they translate the experience that they've had into what is on the resume. And so they've worked on this great group project. They've put their heart and soul into creating something in a student organization. And then they go to write about it on their resume, and it's very factual in what they did. It's very task driven. Using some generative AI, they could work to put that into language that is specific for their industry. They can highlight the actual skills that they're using. Sometimes that's a difficult thing for them to identify. I find with CSE students, it can be particularly challenging to try to find the transferable skills. So those non-technical skills that they're using in their situations, in their projects, it can be really challenging for them to think of, oh yeah, well, I did have to work on that with other people. And so I did build my communication skills through this project in addition to Python or the other things that they're doing. So these AI systems can be helpful in that way. And then, translating, like I was saying, translating kind of these task, very driven statements into things that show the skills and match the terminology that industry professionals are using. And again, with this, students are still needing to be a part of the process. They have to, actually acknowledge that they did the things that AI is suggesting. And they have to think through critically all of the things that they've done in their experience in courses or in their student groups or at their internships and really still determine which of these things shows their best work. And then they will probably have to be the ones to actually quantify the results because, I mean, AI could make it up for you, but you want it to be factual. So they're going to have to go in and, describe how much of something they did, how accurate it was, the scope and scale of the project and what they were working on. And then the last one, I've kind of spoke to this a little bit already, but just in that practice, interview and reflection. And so using AI to generate some sample interview questions. It is also really great at helping students structure their answer. So we use an acronym called STAR. Many people have heard of that. It's an acronym as you're answering behavioral-based questions where you talk about the situation, the task, the action, and the result. When you're answering those, many employers listen specifically for those 4 pieces of a question. And so having students practice answering that way, AI is really great at helping them structure those answers. So you can put in, you can even ask Gemini to do like a live interview with you where it'll ask you a question, you type in your answer, it'll give you feedback, or it'll just move on and ask you the next question if you'd like. And then at the end, it can kind of go back through and help you refine your answers a little bit, help put some structure around them, help make them more organized as you're doing your answers. But again, with this, students still have to provide their authentic examples. They have to reflect on their work, what they did, what they didn't do. And they'll still need to do the practice aloud as they're adapting for real conversations and being prepared to deliver those answers. Like I mentioned, reading off screen or reading scripts is something that employers don't love to see. And so they still need to do that practice. And our office obviously does that as well as other resources where they could do some practice interviewing. So just a few takeaways I hope that you've gotten today is that the AI in job searches is growing, but not universal. So there's still opportunity for more folks to get on board with using these tools. Students are, kind of unsure of how to approach them. So, prompting them, giving them ideas on how they could use it. Please still refer them to us. We don't want these things to take our place, but if they can help supplement the work that we're doing, we're really happy to share that load. And then, using helping them see how to use this responsibly. There are employers who are asking the question now on applications, did any of this or any of your materials generated by AI, similar to how higher ed is using those kind of questions on admissions and on in the classroom. Employers are asking for that too. And if you are using it, there are ways to cite it or to attribute some of those usage of those tools. I have seen on a few actual resumes, like in the footer, this resume was partially generated using ChatGPT. And so there's different levels of comfortability with that and how people want to attribute some of the usage of that. And then we can help students work through these things, and you can too. And so if you have questions or thoughts, would love to hear them on how you've seen folks use this or how you anticipate helping students use these tools in the future.